You know, like Tracy, I have a faith-based life because I am a minister and have been a preacher and a teacher before I understood those titles. But I understand this about most faith-based institutions and folks that operate on a challenge of faith is that you must go out and teach what you know. You must be willing to be sent out to teach what you know. And to be sent out, you must be willing to stand in adverse circumstances. So I stood on the corners and sold the newspapers and told the people don't believe what came on the news at 5 o'clock because, you know, there's a different way of doing things. And I stood against the FBI, the local police who circled us and followed us. I had so many FBI agents following me that I began to know them. I began to know them. I could look in my rearview mirror at 4 a.m. when I was on my way to the collective, and I could see the gentleman in his little red car, and then I would see him on the corner of Alcatraz and Adeline when I was selling my newspapers. I'd see him drive by at 2 in the p.m., and then if I went out to Cal State Hayward to check on my paperwork or to get back in school, there he was, pulling in the parking lot right behind me. I began to know the people that were standing against me. But more importantly, I began to understand the platform upon which they operated, and I never forgot it. So as I moved through life and became an educator, became adjunct faculty at California Institute for Integral Studies, stood with the San Francisco Sheriff's Department, will not stand with it, but, you know, stand in opposition to it, I'm sorry, and teach the women who are unfortunate enough to have fallen into the trap of discrimination, poverty, miseducation, poor health, abandonment, discouragement, and a lack of understanding of who they are and who they may yet one day become, those women, as I took a stand and began to hold them while they cried over the years and listen to their heart's desire and understand the dreams that have been deferred, as I took that time to begin to figure out alternatives to offer them, tools which we can use, bridges which we can build with hearts, minds, and community resources upon which they can walk to the other side. As I began to do this over the years, I understood that their needs were universal. That their needs were universal. Oh, some of them came from the Tenderloin, a very dreadful, awful place, hell, in San Francisco. Some of them came from other places across the bay. Some of them came from Berkeley, Vallejo, but from whatever district they had come, and also whatever ethnicity they reflected. If they were poor enough and miserable enough to be in that situation, their dreams were the same. Will one day someone care about me? What can I do alone and disenchanted? Will one day someone come to see about me and offer me what I have never had? A willing heart, an open ear, and a bridge upon which I can walk across this troubled water. My darling, will you read the definition I have for you? Stand and read it. Thank you. This is Velia.
Restore, to give back, or to put or bring something back to existence or use, or to return something to an earlier or original condition by repairing it, cleaning it, or etc.
Thank you, my love. Thank you. Restore. Thank you. To restore, to rebuild, to renew, to invigorate, to recreate, to attempt to bring something back to its original luster, because we know that when we are born, we are beautiful. We are filled with potential, and there is no infant that I have ever seen that had a prison number tattooed on his little body. I've never seen that. So I'm going to assume that every child I have seen in an infant basket or bundle, wherever, starts out with the same ability, or it's close enough so that we can't tell the difference. But it is the injustice of the institutions which collide into that individual, which diminish that individual. So when I began to teach about restoration and began to ponder what does it take to renew, what does it take to restore, really I began to understand that I must not be content with working with the person in front of me. I must challenge the violence in the community that is committed by the institutions. Well, those institutions that create those prison pipelines. I love Michelle Alexander's work because working in the prison for so long, I've already known it. So to see it written, I've had tears run down my face. I said, oh, so somebody else does understand this now. This word is going out. There is a clarion call for our rapt attention. Our attention and our disciplined response. How then can we teach restoration if we don't understand that there are other entities involved in the pilgrimage towards a downfall or deteriorated life episode? We must understand that. And then we must be willing to put ourselves on some line or another. On some line or another, you have to take some risk or another to go up against the institutions that create the maladies in which we find ourselves today. So I like to call my work, an all hands on deck call. It's an all hands on deck. Now, I don't know. I was a kid in Berkeley, and I used to run up to the movies on Shattuck when I thought I could get away from home. And I used to pay for it with 3 7-Up caps in the summertime. and on some of those movies that I used to see the big ships and the swashbuckling captains. And I remember they used to say things like, all hands on deck, all hands on deck. And I would just be so excited. I would think, oh, all hands on deck. But that's returned to me now that I no longer pay with 3 7-Up bottle caps. Now, when I look at our communities, which are diminishing daily, I know that that is a relative call for today. All hands on deck. No matter what we have done, no matter from whence we have retired, no matter how many times we've been knocked down, no matter how many times we've worked ourselves to a frazzle, we are yet called to do this work. And some of us now must take the wise and positions of being the sage. We must teach others to go out and do what we have already done. I have taught so many budding young therapists in universities, and they sit there and they wonder, well, finally they ask the question, well, Miss Dawson, what do you think I can do? Oh, I love that question because, you know, then I know that inner pot is bubbling, that flame is catching, it's igniting, and I think, oh, I tell them, oh, that's your personal journey. This is your personal work now. Because surely you came here for a reason. Because I know everyone in here came here for a reason today. It's no coincidence that we have come from so far and so near and all are sharing this time together. So when we leave today, we remember that it is time. The clarion call has gone forth, that we have no time to lose. We have no time to lose. When I return to the Sheriff's Department, I'll go straight back to the women's dorm. And unfortunately, I will see many of the women that I have seen coming in over the years. I've seen many women come in at 18, 19, and now they're 20 years older. I have mitigated with them in juvenile courts and help them to regain custody of their children, only to see their children come into the jail now too. Unfortunately now, it's not unusual for me to walk into a dorm and see Susie and see Susie's daughter sitting side by side in matching uniforms. That's no longer an anomaly. It's the status quo. And every woman in that dorm heads up at the call, goes down the hall to, I'm gonna say it, Five Keys Charter School in San Francisco, and Five Keys Charter School gets paid for every bum in the seat every day, and then they teach whatever they teach, but they don't teach the women how to recognize danger when it is approaching, and they don't help them to meet a place of restoration and personal renewal, so that when they leave the jail, they do what? They do two things. They die or they come back. And the people that are betting on them to come back, who build the institutions to house them, to feed them, to miseducate them, they can count on the fact that they are going to get a return. Their stockholders will be happy. That's the name of this game now. So somewhere along that line of recycling human beings and of diminished hope, we have to be willing to make a stand. I would ask all of you to reconsider today, knowing that I'm preaching to the choir. I still would ask you to reconsider and see if there's anything you can do to make your reach extend a little longer today. Is there a place where you may reap a harvest from touching souls and hearts that you have not yet attempted? Is there any work that you have on a back burner, any writing? I hate to look at my sister for that one. Any writing that you know you are called to do and haven't done yet? Is there something that is unfinished that you are leaving in your wake today? I would just encourage you, as I'm encouraging myself, to do what has to be done, to continue to do what has to be done. Once again, I consider it an honor to speak before an audience of advocates. You speak before a room filled with people who know the value of a human life and who are willing to sacrifice to add to that value and are not complacent or not content with the continuing diminishing of human souls today. It's truly an honor for me. I thank you. Yeah.
So we have about 15 minutes, stretching the time a little because we stretched it before we began. For you. Is there anyone who would like to contribute your thoughts or questions or anything at this point? We've taken you on several journeys. The connection, of course, comes back to us now. Yes, sir?
A question in reference to the Black Panther movement. At what point in history did it, in your opinion, turn into a negative, or was it ever negative in your opinion?
Absolutely.
About when you were a part of that movement?
So, as a young woman, very idealistic and believing in the goodness of people and believing that people were worth saving, and I still have that. It was a very painful experience for me to watch the deterioration of the Black Panther parties. And the moment it began was when Huey P. Newton moved into the housing on Lakeshore.
Penthouse.
The penthouse. Because we were a system of collectives. We were a system of collectives, and I know much has been written about, how women were treated, but I really never saw it. I was busy in the field doing my work, And I took the orders of the day because I believed in what I was doing. So I stopped my university. I caused havoc in my family. My husband was upset. My mother was upset. Everybody was upset. But I could not help myself because I wanted people to live. And the more I learned, the more unhappy I was about the injustice in the world. But when Huey P. Newton took his place in the penthouse, and we were all putting all our money, we were all putting all of our money into our collectives, then I thought, well, how can